Wow, it has been a while. Tip of the tongue, teeth in the lips. What is that from? Tip of the tongue, teeth, School of Rock, obviously. Everything I ever say in my whole life is from the School of Rock. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. Hope you're having a lovely day. I think we all know by now, these book videos require a few things for maximum viewing potential. It might be the height of summer. You might be sweating in every nook and cranny possible right now. I'm afraid you will still need the following. You will need a hot drink, preferably caffeinated, even if you're already alarmingly over-caffeinated today. That's how to do it properly. I'm gonna say a blanket for maximum snuggle potential purposes. In fact, soft furnishings of any kind really. Chuck a few cushions in the mix, grab yourself your favourite snuggly jumper, and most importantly, you're gonna need your book brain, because today it's time for a to be or not TBR. If you have never watched one of these around here before, if you're used to coming over to this channel to see me prancing around Magic Kingdom eating cheeseburger spring rolls. Hello, welcome to the channel. This is what I normally do when Mickey Mouse isn't launching me by the ears down a roller coaster. This is what you can normally find me doing. Books. And in these videos I like to talk about 5 books that I have read recently. I like to give you a little lowdown of what they're all about. I give you a verdict of what I thought about them, and then I tell you whether it's a to be or a not TBR. See what I did there? Honestly, I'm mostly just proud of the title of this series. I can't let it go. So before we get stuck in with this one today, I'm just gonna give a little shout out to today's lovely sponsor, which is Skillshare, including some free stuff for you. One of my favorite ways to spend my free time is obviously getting up close and personal with a very good book, but using Skillshare to find myself some kind of new, lovely, cozy, creative, crafty activity to get my hands on is definitely a very close second. Skillshare is an online learning community which you can become a part of, and it has literally thousands of creative classes which are all available for you to try out. Anything you've ever spotted and thought like, wow, I'd really love to be able to do that. I really wish I was good at that. You will find a class in it over on Skillshare, and it will be taught by a wonderfully talented expert in the subject to guide you right the way through it. Whenever I have one of those kind of quiet Sunday afternoons where I don't really know what I want to do with myself, but I know I want to be doing something, I will head straight over to Skillshare to see if there's anything that catches my eye. And in the past, I have used it to do typography classes, productivity classes, embroidery classes. I've done creative writing classes, pretty much anything that I enjoy spending time doing. I know that I'll be able to find a class for it over on Skillshare. Just last weekend, because Adam was away, I had some free time to kill, so I set myself up and did a gorgeous class called Art Journaling for Self-Care. It is taught by Amanda Rachel Lee, who is actually a YouTuber that I have watched for years and years, so as soon as I spotted her class, I knew I was going to do that one. There's no greater treat really than allowing yourself some time to explore something that you might have a little bit of a passion for. And the first 1,000 of you guys to use the link in the description box for Skillshare, you will receive a month's free trial over on Skillshare to try as many different classes as you like, and you can start exploring your own creativity today, which is really exciting. Okay, on that note, we are back to the books. Let's get stuck in to be or not TBR. Okay, how about we kick off today's bunch of books on a nice jolly high note with one of the most heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, saddest books I've ever read. Ah, sounds wonderful, perfect, just what everybody wants. This is Sukibane by Douglas Stewart. And I'll be very honest here, I'm gonna hold my hands up. I was actually given this book as a gift by a relative a long time ago when it was kind of brand new, so it might have even been 2020, and this sat on my pile of books completely unnoticed. I actually don't think I even read the blurb because I looked at the cover and was just like, no. But I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you, this is one of the best books I've ever read. Sound the alarm, ring the klaxons. Wonder what they're up to these days. Haven't heard from them since 2006. Klaxons, anybody? No? Millennials out there? So let that be a lesson to us all. Even if this looks like something that you are instantly just like, no, thank you, it's black and white, I implore you to read this book. Don't be like me. Don't be like me. So, Sukibane. This is the story of Hugh, otherwise known as Shuggy, through his childhood, right from the age of 6 all the way through to his teens, I think about 16, and it is set in 1980s Glasgow. And that was the era of Thatcher's government, which left many men, like husbands and sons and brothers, unemployed with no prospects. It was a real kind of time of hardship. For a lot of northern workers and northern families, it was a very, very hard time. It's kind of like an infamous time still now in northern communities. So with all that in mind, if you kind of know anything about that era, you will probably be able to guess that at times during this book, this is quite a tough read. It's very upsetting in a lot of different ways. So if you're not really in the headspace for something that's quite hard hitting, and I feel like the word is like gritty. So we've got Shuggy as a kid in this very kind of bleak, very difficult environment, and he is just doing what kids do. Not really aware of the bigger picture and how it's happened, but just aware that life is very difficult for him and everyone around him. And the story is mainly about Shuggy's relationship with his mum Agnes, who he is absolutely besotted with. He adores her, but she is completely falling apart and failing at keeping things together for herself, for her family, for her kids. She's just as much a main character because Shuggy's dad has got up and left the family. He's left her on her own to deal with the kids and also to deal with her own alcoholism at the same time. Definitely one of the kind of saddest, most gut-wrenching things that you really pick up on in this story is that very, very painful feeling of kind of really deeply, deeply loving somebody and just kind of it being natural in your nature to love somebody completely, but that somebody continues to fail you while they're being failed by everybody else around them as well. It's like a vicious cycle. And as a reader, that's part of what makes this book so gut-wrenching. You can also feel great empathy for her as well because she's just constantly trying to fight off her own demons. So it's a real kind of mixture of, and I guess it's just a reflection of real life, isn't it? Is that there's no one who is the good guy and the bad guy. Everyone's just fighting their own demons and that affects everybody else around them. They're such vivid characters and they're written with so much realism and there's so much affection there from the author. Like I could tell the author kind of loved the characters that he was writing. Also, just as a side note, which is probably going to sound ridiculous, a lot of this book is written with like a Glaswegian dialect. It's like written in the accent, which is amazing for kind of being really absorbed and immersed into the story. But it does make it a little bit tricky if that's not something that you're really familiar with. Luckily, I have some Scottish friends, so I read the words like picturing their accent, which made it a lot easier. Even though it is such a hard-hitting and very, very emotional book, something in it, in such a heavy story, I actually found very beautiful as well. I don't know where this kind of like feeling of hope manages to come from in a story like this, but it is there. I was really affected by it, even though it was a difficult read. I couldn't put it down. I think it's an outstanding TBR. But as I said, just to reiterate, make sure you're in the right headspace for this one. Otherwise, it might break you. Second book for today, very mysteriously, seems to have vanished into thin air. It's not on the rainbow bookshelf. If anyone can riddle me as to what the hell I've done with this book, any of my friends watching, have I lent it to you and completely forgotten? So what I'm gonna do is put a nice picture of it here. Visual aids. I'm sure you'll instantly recognize the cover. This is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Honestly, I feel like I saw this book everywhere and for so long that I was kind of maybe brainwashed into reading it. Whether I wanted to or not, I was gonna read this book. And I always think it's a bit of a tricky one going into a book that is as vastly popular as this, because I kind of sometimes feel like the only way is down. So that bodes well. Also says a lot about my frame of mind. So I went into this one absolutely so ready to fall in love with this story. Like I was so ready. I read the summary and I was like, this is 100% a bit of me. The concept I absolutely love. I think it is truly magical. Like the premise of this story, the concept is that for every person out there, for you and for me, a library exists which contains an infinite number of books, the books of your own regret. And you open the cover to each book and it transports you into living the life that you would have been leading if you had decided differently about that regret, if you decided to go for it, if you decided to say yes, if you decided to say no, which is such a cool concept to me. I love that premise for a story so much because, you know, that's life. Everybody's got those kind of things that niggle at the back of their brain where you think, what if? Like the big capital W and the big capital I, what if? So that's the background, but first we meet the main character, Nora, and she feels completely trapped within her own life. She feels like she's failed at every turn. She's deeply, deeply depressed and she's plagued with regret. And one day Nora tries to take her own life, but instead she opens her eyes and she finds herself in her midnight library. So she begins this quest of opening up every single book, trying to find the right life for her that is gonna make her feel content and happy. She begins addressing all the regrets that she's got to find where she went wrong. And all of her regrets lead to so many different paths. Like there's times where she could have been a swimmer and a rock star and a philosopher, and she's an explorer at one point, and like a wife and a pub owner, and like so many different things. She could have been like anything and everything with all the different possibilities that life holds for every single one of us. That's like a really cool part of the structure of the story. Actually, I really liked it because it almost feels like little mini short stories. Like each chapter, as she kind of dives into each regret, almost feels like a little separate short story, which is cool. And I guess you can probably maybe see where this is going, but will all of those mysterious what ifs actually be as incredible as they might seem that they would be? So the concept as a whole, loved it, absolutely loved it. Thought it was properly magical, and even though again like parts of this are quite heavy subject matter, it actually turns into something very comforting and kind of heartwarming and good for the soul, because it's kind of about discovering what really matters in life. The last few years we've had have been full of loneliness and loss and every difficult thing you can possibly think of. I think at the moment this could actually be a very, very comforting read for a lot of people. I was just kind of held back from like absolutely falling head over heels in love with this one. I don't even really know why. The kind of self-help messages in this book kind of felt like they were being delivered on a silver platter to you, like directly into your face, like almost like whacking you over the head with a sledgehammer, being like, listen to these important messages. I think I would have liked it a little bit more if there was like a little bit of, almost like a little bit of delicateness to it for you to kind of have those moments of realization for yourself, rather than someone whacking you around the head with them. It felt a little bit more like a self-help book coated in fiction, rather than fiction with messages of self-help woven throughout it. It's thought-provoking, it kind of sends you down the path of thinking about your own life. I think it's inspiring if you let it be inspiring. If you're anything like me, this is definitely a TBR to settle your curiosity more than anything, because it's just, I mean, if there's anybody left that hasn't read this book yet, you're probably still curious about it. It always really makes me laugh when I make these videos, because there's just absolutely no theme or sense to the books that I clearly reach for. Like the variety from something so helpful and so inspiring and like a beam of light directly into your soul for all the positive vibes, to something so bleak and hopeless. So this is The Manningtree Witches by A.K. Blackmore. I think we all know by now that if you write the word witch on a book cover, Muggins over here will spend some money on it. I read a blurb for this book. I've actually written it down, so let me read it to you right now. This blurb, let me just tell you that the summary for this book is Wolf Hall, which I did my dissertation on, fun fact. Wolf Hall meets the favourite in this beguiling debut novel. If you describe anything as beguiling, I'm in. Brilliantly brings to life the residents of a small English town in the grip of 17th century witch trials and the young woman tasked with saving them all from themselves. Take my damn money. So this one is set in England in the 1640s when puritanical fever has turned everyone slightly insane and life is about to get real tricky for women. We meet Rebecca West. She is fatherless and husbandless. She lives a very mundane life with her mother. But it is spiced up a little every so often by the handsome clerk called John Eads. That handsome clerk, you know, he wishes her a good day and she's all afluster. There's nothing like a good day to get the heart racing, is there, ladies? Then this new guy, Matthew Hopkins, arrives. And if you know anything about the witch trials, you'll know that Matthew Hopkins is not a welcome arrival. Matthew Hopkins is not a good thing at all. Alert, alert. Honestly, if I met someone called Matthew Hopkins in modern life in this day and age, I would be a little bit wary of him. He starts asking questions about the women in the town, and before you know it, there's rumours of covens and pacts and suspicious behaviour. All this talk starts lingering in the air, and before you know it, well, we all know what happens. This book is so skilled at crafting that atmosphere. You can feel it like fall over you while you're reading it, that complete atmosphere of eeriness. Doesn't even do it justice. That kind of atmosphere of, oh my god, I know what is happening. Blah. Just such a skilled author at creating that eerie tone, which you really need for a novel like this. It just makes you feel that exact atmosphere of tension and suspicion that is happening in the story as you're reading it, which is always a sign of a great author. And sometimes books like this have a little bit of respite and kind of offer you like a little bit of hope or whatever. Not this one. Let me tell you, there is absolutely no comfort to be found in this story. So if that doesn't sell it to you, I don't know what will. And maybe even my favourite thing about this book was that the story included quite a lot of primary sources, like from the time, which is just really cool to me. I think that's a really good idea. It kind of brings extra realism into it, and it reminds you that like this really happened. Like this is a story based in truth. I thought the characters were great and fascinating. I thought the story was gripping. It's actually just quite difficult language to really keep yourself focused on. This author has chosen quite like archaic poetic language to write this story in, which obviously really suits the 17th century setting. It makes a lot of sense creatively, but it means that the actual experience of reading is a lot harder. It's that real kind of like, and I really appreciate it as well, it's that real kind of like masterful, like very crafted style of prose. As I said, completely appreciate it and will definitely admire it, and I think it's so clever, but it just makes the reading experience a lot more difficult. So I would say if you enjoy witch-based content, or if you just kind of enjoy historical fiction that really feels like historical fiction and doesn't give you any of that slightly easier modern respite, then this is a TBR for sure. I did enjoy it and I was really impressed by it. It's just a little bit of a challenge. It also really made me want a cat called Vinegar Tom. What a great, cool name for a cat. Okay, number 4, Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. Where did this come from? So every so often, I basically like to ruin my own life for a couple of weeks and read a classic. I don't really know why. It basically just makes me feel like I'm delaying the inevitable rotting of my own brain, I guess. I always hope that I'm gonna find like a real genuine joy in them now when I reach for them of my own accord. So this time I picked up Brideshead Revisited. Big mistake, huge. Why I picked this one, I have absolutely no idea, couldn't tell you. I'm just really into these cloth-bound classics, in all honesty. I'm just trying to collect them all. This is my Pokemon cards for age 31. In my head, this was something very different from what it actually is, which is a look back at the time before the Second World War. The main character is Charles Ryder, who becomes completely infatuated and like sucked into the world of this extremely wealthy, privileged family. And when I say wealthy, I mean like aristocratic level wealthy, like next level. Family's called the Marchmains, and Charles meets them as this kind of world that they exist in, this like hugely wealthy, privileged society that they're part of, is starting to disappear. And then the book kind of tells the story of Charles's relationship between different members of that family as time goes on. Charles meets the Marchmains through Sebastian, Lord Sebastian, who he becomes very close to at university. They are like inseparable best friends, maybe more. I think it's pretty obvious I didn't enjoy this book at all, but I did think it was very interesting, and for me anyway, very unexpected that a book this old seemed to have a very openly gay relationship in it. Seems very like thickly implied, like with a trowel, that Charles and Sebastian are in love rather than just being like best friends. That's how I read it anyway. I feel like well, I won't, because I didn't enjoy the story. If I'd enjoyed the story more, I would have done more reading around that. I probably won't. But if anyone's ever kind of studied this or has any knowledge about that, I would be really interested to hear that. I just didn't feel any connection besides that point of interest. I didn't feel any connection to this book, really. I always feel terrible saying that about a classic as well, because people are, you know, so kind of passionate about them. As soon as one of the characters said this exact phrase, "Are you lurking amongst the hobbledehoys?" I was out. I think as the book goes on, Charles is just a terrible person. He marries someone who he decides isn't actually his true love after all. He then gallivants off to Guatemala to paint for 2 years. And then when his wife is like, that's fine, would you mind like coming to see your children at some point? He literally thinks that she's the worst woman in the world. I'm pretty sure he says that she's vulgar for asking him to just like come and say hi to his kids. It goes without saying that I have completely missed some very important messages and probably very key satire, but I think I will stick to Little Women when it comes to my classics. Oh, when I talked about this on Instagram though, a lot of people said that I should watch I think it's a BBC dramatization from literally like the 1980s. I think Jeremy Irons stars in it. A lot of people actually did say to give up on the book, but definitely watch the TV adaptation. So maybe I'll do that. I probably won't. Maybe I will. Okay, last but not least for today, thank God, let's get this party started again. After literally dreading talking about that last one because I know people are gonna come for me, I am so excited to talk about Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. One of my most enjoyable reads of the year so far, I'm gonna say. Also, we've just gotta take a moment. You know me in a gold foiled cover. Can we just? I mean, that is a thing of beauty. She's a supermodel. So Ariadne is one of those Greek mythology retelling stories which have been so endlessly popular over the last couple of years and kind of shows no signs of stopping either. I generally really tend to love them, but since digging and diving into a few of them now, I do find that I particularly enjoy the ones that have a female lead, if they're kind of retold from a female perspective. So Ariadne is Princess of Crete. She loves to dance. She is a quiet observer who likes to listen and take everything in. She loves all the stories of all the gods and heroes that are surrounding this world, but lying beneath her beautiful life in this golden palace is the presence of her brother, who is not just any brother, he is the Minotaur, and he needs blood sacrifice. No big deal. Oh, brothers, eh? Am I right? I feel like anyone with a younger brother will relate to that one. Sorry, Sam, if you're watching, which you're not because you haven't read a book in probably like 25 years. But younger brothers are literally the Minotaur of your life for all of us. Guess who arrives on the scene but Prince of Athens, Theseus, absolute bloody legend. And Ariadne, bless her, falls absolutely head over heels in love with him on contact. Obviously, we've all been there. And she risks everything to help him slay the Minotaur and escape from Crete. But will her efforts actually lead to a happy ending? What will happen to her younger sister Phaedra, who she has to leave behind? So as I said, kind of why I reached for this story, I love the fact that this is a female lead to a story that we all think we already know. I think it's just such a clever idea. There's a lot of female characters who are largely kind of like forgotten about and compromised in mythology. They're often neglected and mistreated and abused, made to look like stupid and foolish compared to the men around them who are all, you know, gods and heroes and always save the day. But this one really takes a female character who would have been kind of in the wings and brings her right to the forefront and puts her right in the spotlight. And I just think that is such a cool concept for an author to do. I'm just totally here for it, honestly. I want more. I remember feeling like the pacing was a little bit weird at points in this one. So this story follows Ariadne's whole life. First third of this book was the kind of like real magic for me, where everything kind of really kicks off. And I did feel like the rest maybe didn't quite match up to that, but maybe that is just because the first kind of third is the story that we're all very familiar with, and it just felt the most fleshed out. I do think though it picks up again at the end. I really enjoyed the ending. Well, enjoyed is maybe the wrong word. I actually cried reading the end. And it's quite hard to describe, but I think this one had like a real kind of effortless feeling of femininity to it, the style of writing. It felt almost quite elegant to read, which is really lovely, but it also did manage to really be quite punchy still when it needed to be. Like I said, the ending really made me cry like a baby. It can really pack a punch when it needs to, and I guess that actually matches the character of Ariadne really nicely. I know I'm gonna get comments saying this as well because I have messages about it. I am actually currently reading Circe by Madeline Miller. The two books actually have a little bit of crossover to them as well actually, which is pretty cool, although it's slightly confusing for my memory. And I believe there is also another one which is kind of like a heavy hitter in this category called The Silence of the Girls, I want to say, which I've also heard really good things about. If you enjoy your Greek mythology retellings, this is an absolute must read. I really enjoyed it. Something about the Minotaur story. It's a good one. Love the characters, love the writing styles, and that cover. I think we're in love. It's a TBR, of course. So that is everything today from my latest to be or not TBR. I hope you found a couple of titles in there which might have grabbed your attention. Don't forget as well to collect your free creative classes on Skillshare. I'm going to make sure to leave everything you need to know about that in the description box down below. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let me just round this one up by gathering my goods to give you a little refresh. You have to just imagine the Midnight Library on top of this pile. What have I done with that? Please do let me know if you have read any of this lot, what you thought about them, if you loved them, if you hated them, if you're going to give them a go now. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. I hope life is going good for you right now. I hope things are all good. Take good care, and I will see you very soon with another video.